Once upon a time in the bright village of Umudike, there lived a man named Chima. Chima had a wife named Adayabi. Adayabi was beloved by everyone for her kindness. One night, however, something tragic occurred. Adayabi disappeared, and no one could find her anywhere. The villagers searched everywhere. They looked behind the tall palm trees, near the river, and under the bushes. Neka was among those leading the search. Even Mamankechi joined the efforts, calling out with a worried tone. Is, the village elder, organized search parties and provided guidance. Everyone was very worried. After many days, the villagers thought that Adayabi must have died because they could not find her anywhere. They were very sad and missed her a lot. The villagers gathered to share their fond memories of Adayabi. Her absence left a void in the heart of Umudike. But Chima had a secret, a very big secret. Chima knew where Adayabi, his wife, was. Because of this, Chima acted sad in front of the villagers, but inside he was conflicted. He secretly harbored thoughts of marrying Neka. She was unaware of Chima's true feelings. Chima didn't tell anyone his secret, not even Is. Every night, Chima looked at the stars and felt a little scared because he knew the truth about where Adayabi was. The big secret stayed with Chima while the village thought Adayabi had disappeared forever. Back in the present, Chima tried to live like everything was normal. But inside he felt very scared and sad. When alone, he heard whispers that sounded like Adayabi's voice. Sometimes at night, he dreamt that Adayabi came back looking sad and asking, "Why, Chima?" The memory of that night under the mango tree kept haunting him. Chima knew he should feel happy about his plans with Neka, but the secret of what he did to Adayabi weighed heavily on his heart. He wondered if he would ever feel light and happy again. In the village, things started to feel a little strange at night. The wind seemed to howl louder than before, and sometimes Chima's doors would slam shut even when there was no breeze. The big mango tree under which Chima and Adayabi used to sit began to drop its mangoes before they were ripe, falling heavily to the ground. He laughed with the villagers and worked on his farm during the day, but inside, he couldn't shake the unsettling feeling. The villagers noticed the eerie occurrences too. They whispered to each other, "Do you feel it? The chill in the air when you walk past Chima's house? Maybe it's Adayabi's spirit," some speculated. "Maybe she's not at peace." He laughed a little too hard, trying to mask his unease. He tried to ignore the goosebumps on his arms whenever he was home alone, telling himself it was all silly superstition. Deep down, though, Chima couldn't shake the feeling that Adayabi's spirit was somehow present, lingering in the shadows of their home and in the rustling leaves of the mango tree. He wondered if his guilt was manifesting in these strange occurrences, punishing him for what he had done. Instead of worrying about the strange happenings, Chima focused on Neka. She was gentle and kind, with a smile that reminded him a little of Adayabi. He started visiting Neka frequently, bringing her gifts of yams and honey, trying to win her affections. They would sit together, Chima weaving his charm with sweet words and laughter. But every time Chima spoke to Neka, a gust of wind would blow through, rustling the leaves and making the curtains dance. At night, the strange sounds around his house grew louder. It seemed that the more Chima tried to ignore the signs, the stronger they returned, as if they were trying to tell him something important. Even so, Chima kept dismissing these signs, focusing all his attention on Neka. He laughed off the villagers' superstitions and brushed aside his own growing unease. But deep down, a fear began to gnaw at him, a fear that maybe the village whispers were right. Maybe Adayabi's spirit really was stirring, and maybe, just maybe, it wanted justice. As Chima struggled to bury his guilt and move forward with his plans for Neka, the whispers grew louder, the wind more insistent. A chilling visual of Chima failing to disregard Adayabi's overwhelming presence. With each passing day, his outward appearance of normality cracks a bit more, exposing the guilt and fear he holds within. One bright morning, when the sun painted the sky a soft orange, Chima decided it was time to ask Neka to marry him. He put on his best shirt, the one with patterns of the great river, and combed his hair until it lay smooth against his head. In his hand, he held a small woven basket filled with the sweetest oranges from his garden, his heart fluttering like a caged bird. Neka, with her gentle features and warm smile, was tending to her flower garden when Chima arrived. But when Chima mentioned marriage, Neka's smile faltered, and she paused, her hands still in the soil. Chima, Neka began, her voice trailing off as she looked around, searching for the right words carried by the wind. I loved Adeobi very much. She was like a sister to me. It feels too soon, and it feels strange without her. Chima's heart sank a little at her words, realizing how deeply Adeobi's absence affected everyone, especially Neka. He nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her feelings. Chima nodded, trying to mask the flicker of worry in his eyes. I understand, Neka. But life must go on, and we find happiness where we can, he said, his voice almost convincing. As they spoke, a cold breeze swept through the garden, chilling their bones despite the morning sun. Neka shivered and looked around, a sense of unease creeping up her spine. The flowers in her garden swayed violently, as if in disapproval, though there was hardly any wind to explain it. Did you feel that? Neka whispered, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and confusion. It's just a chilly morning, Chima said quickly, too quickly, as he glanced nervously around, half expecting to see Adeobi standing there. He reached out to take Neka's hand, but just as their fingers were about to touch, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. A single, beautiful flower from Adeobi's favorite bush suddenly wilted and died right before their eyes. Neka pulled her hand back, her heart racing. Chima, I need some time to think about this, please, she stammered, her loyalty to Adeobi tangling her feelings like the vines in her garden. Chima left Neka's house with a heavy heart, the basket of oranges still in his hand, untouched and unwanted. As he walked back to his house, the air felt denser and the whispers of the village seemed to follow him. The whispers following Chima murmured about spirits and unsettled deaths. That night, as Chima tried to sleep, the image of the wilted flower haunted him. The house creaked and groaned as if bearing the weight of an unseen presence, and he tossed and turned, his mind a turmoil of regret and fear. It seemed the more he tried to move forward, the stronger the past clung to him, reminding him of the grave secret buried just outside his window. One morning, after a night filled with uneasy dreams, Chima decided he could no longer bear the strange happenings and the heavy guilt alone. He walked to the edge of the village where an old, wise woman named Momonkechi lived. Her hut was small, surrounded by curious herbs and whispering trees. The villagers said she could speak to spirits and uncover deep secrets. As Chima approached, Momonkechi was sitting outside her hut, her eyes closed as if she was listening to the wind. Without opening her eyes, she spoke, I've been expecting you, Chima. Chima felt a shiver run down his spine. He sat down across from her, the dirt cool beneath his feet. I need your help, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. There are strange things happening around my home. I hear whispers and things move on their own. Momonkechi opened her eyes, looking directly into Chima's with a gaze that seemed to see right through him. The spirits are restless, she said slowly. They speak of darkness and a heart burdened with guilt. How do I make it stop? How do I bring peace back to my home? He asked, hoping for a simple solution. The only way to calm the spirits is to confess your sins. The truth must come out to heal the wounds you have caused. Chima's breath caught in his throat. Chima, he couldn't possibly reveal what he had done to Adeobi. No, there must be another way. Can't you do a ritual or give me an amulet? Chima pleaded, desperation coloring his voice. Momonkechi shook her head, her expression somber. Some disturbances are beyond the help of herbs and charms. Your spirit is tied to the deed you have hidden. Unless you release that truth, there will be no peace for you or the spirit that haunts you. Chima stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the dirt. No, I cannot, he muttered, more to himself than to Momonkechi. As he turned to leave, she called out, "Be warned, Chima. Secrets buried in darkness have a way of coming to light. It is better to be the one who reveals them than the one who is revealed." Chima walked back to the village, Momonkechi's words echoing in his mind. With each step, his fear grew. He looked over his shoulder, half expecting to see Adeobi's spirit following him. As he reached his house, the sky darkened, and the whispers in the wind grew louder, carrying with them the promise of an impending storm. His heart was heavy with the weight of his secrets. He knew he couldn't keep this hidden much longer. But confessing would mean facing the consequences of his actions and losing everything he held dear. Chima sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, torn between fear and the need to finally be free from his haunting past. The night grew darker and colder, and Chima realized that he had to make a choice, either to keep running from his guilt or to face it head-on and seek redemption. After a sleepless night, Chima made a decision. He couldn't bear the weight of his secret any longer. He needed to confess, to free himself from the chains of guilt that bound him. With a heavy heart, he walked to the center of the village, where the elders gathered in the morning to discuss important matters. As Chima stood before the elders, he felt the eyes of the villagers upon him, their curious whispers growing louder. He took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice trembling with fear and sorrow. "I have a confession to make," he said, his words cutting through the morning air like a knife. An ultra-high-resolution image of Chima, bathed in the serious glow of the elders' attention. He recounts the tragic events of that fateful night, sharing the details of the quarrel with Adeobi, and the accidental push that led to tragic results. His expression is one of stark realization and regret. Panicked and afraid, he had buried her in the backyard, hoping to hide his terrible mistake. As he spoke, tears streamed down his face, and his voice broke with regret. The villagers gasped in shock, and a heavy silence fell over the crowd. The elders exchanged grave looks, their faces etched with sorrow and disappointment. One of the elders, a wise old man named Is, stepped forward. "Chima," he said, his voice stern yet compassionate, "you have committed a grave sin, and you must face the consequences of your actions. But by confessing, you have taken the first step towards redemption." Chima nodded, his heart heavy with remorse. The elders decided that he would be taken to the village's sacred grove, where he would perform a cleansing ritual to seek forgiveness from the spirits. A highly detailed rendering of a remorseful Chima commencing his act of penance by assisting villagers with their daily tasks, their expressions reveal their mixed feelings, and the ambience captures the village's vibrant life. As Chima performed the ritual, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew that he could never undo the harm he had caused, but he hoped that by seeking forgiveness and atonement, he could find some measure of peace. The villagers, though shocked and saddened by the truth, slowly began to forgive Chima. They saw his genuine remorse and his efforts to make amends. Over time, Chima's burden lightened, and the strange occurrences around his home ceased. The whispers in the wind grew softer, and the air felt lighter. Though he would always carry the memory of his actions, Chima found solace in the knowledge that he had faced his past and sought to make things right. And so, the village of Umidike returned to its peaceful ways, and the story of Chima and Adeobi became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the power of truth and the importance of facing one's mistakes. Chima lived the rest of his days with a newfound humility, forever grateful for the chance to seek